Welcome, viewers, to the second edition of the Government Accountability Show on QTV. This talk show is brought to you by the International Republican Institute with funding from the U.S. State Department. I am your host, Omar Ba. I am in the studio, of course, with the DPS, the Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, Adam Ajimba Job, and Lamin Damfa of Cyprus. Before taking you through the objective of this, so I'll just allow the two gentlemen to officially introduce themselves, starting from my right.
Thank you very much, Omar, and thank you, the viewers. I am Lamin Damfa, the chairman of Center for Policy Research and Strategic Studies, Cyprus. And thank you very much for having us here.
Yes. Thank you very much, Omar, and good evening to our viewers. I am Adam Ajimba Job, Deputy Permanent Secretary Programs, Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education. It's a pleasure being with you, Omar.
Gentlemen, you are welcome to the Accountability Show on QTV. Like I said, the objective of the Government Accountability Show is to, of course, provide a platform for government officials to interact with citizens about government's mandate, create awareness about the importance of government accountability and how government accounts to its citizens. I'll start with Mr. Lamin Damfa from Cyprus, with, of course, who will take us through briefly on what is government accountability and when do we know when a government is accountable to its citizens. Mr. Damfa.
Thank you very much, Omar. Just briefly, government accountability is all about making government officials, by extension their various institutions, accountable of the resources under their purview, the allocated resources, and of course also accountability will look at in terms of their performance based on policies, of government. Among other things, the government accountability also look at how transparent, we are, and also look into, how, the citizen could participate, in the entire process itself. So in summary, if you talk about government accountability, you are talking about transparency plus citizen participation. Thank you.
Maybe briefly before giving the DPS the floor, because DPS is going to mainly focus on the Ministry of Basic. Of course, we want to know how accountable are they towards the citizens. But before coming there, maybe you briefly tell us the difference between, because sometimes people mix this, an open government and a transparent government. Maybe you give us a brief definition of the difference.
Well, thank you very much, Omar. Well, sorry. All right. Thank you very much, Omar. The open government, and the transparent government. Yes, they are different. If you look at a government can be open, but not necessarily being transparent. You understand? So what we need to understand here is the fact that in terms of transparency as government, you ensure that all activities, for example, that need public consumption are being open to public. For example, government can make use of their websites, for example, try to give out messages, various government ministries, department, could do that to ensure that at least they are being very much transparent to whatever they are doing. At the same time, government might be open, an open government, but not necessarily can be receptive to a lot of ideas, but yet still they are not very transparent because certain information are still in their cupboards. They are not out for public to see. So what is important, just like I've said in my introduction, is the fact that we need a very, very transparent government where people will actively take part whatever is going on to ensure that that government is fully accountable.
DPS, maybe before coming to the basic about your ministry, maybe you briefly tell our viewers how accountable is your ministry to the citizens of this country.
Yeah, thank you very much, Omar. And once again, good evening to our viewers. I think when you talk about MOPSI, our philosophy, our slogan is, our doors are open to everybody. And as Mr. Damfa talked about, not only being open, but we are always ready to share information with anybody, anywhere, at any time you come to us. We are available to share whatever we are doing, because we know that we are at people's services, and as a result, it is our belief and it is incumbent upon us as a sector to share whatever we are doing with people. So I don't think Gambians would doubt MOPSI's transparency now, because it's very obvious that whatever we are doing, we are getting people to understand, you know, how far we have gone, what are the resources allocated, and how are they being spent. Yeah.
Your ministry, of course, was allocated to 811,691,288 millions in the 2021 budget. Can you briefly tell us what impact will this money make in the ministry?
Yeah, in the 2021 budget, MOPSI is given, as you said, $2,811,691,288. But of this amount, the recurrent, that is what is gone for all the charges and fees, like salaries and other things, is about $2.7 million. It's $743,391,288. Of this amount, as I alluded to, PEs, that is personal emoluments, is about $1,572,116,925, and $1,171,274,363 is meant for the recurrent budget. Then, if you look at the development, it's just about $88,300,000. And the other charges or recurrent is mainly for salaries, that is teachers' salaries, and the people that are working within the ministry. The personnel, that is what goes to, you know, for their upkeep, that's their salaries. And the 68 million is what goes for development, you know, the development works that are going in the school in terms of classroom construction, rehabilitation, and the like is $88,300,000. So if you look at that, that translates to about 12.74% of the national budget. And if you look at our sister ministry, which is the Ministry of Higher Education, which, you know, we have one education sector, you know, and that gives you approximately 14%, because it's 13.98%, because MOHAS is about 1.24%. Now that alone, if you look at what our international partners are advocating for, MOPSI is still yet to get there. Because the GPE, that is the Global Partnership for Education, is advocating for at least governments to be spending 20% of their national budget on education. But as we speak, we are just about 14%. If you talk about sub-Saharan Africa, they talk about 23%. So in a nutshell, you can say MOPSI is our government of the Gambia is still not measuring up to what the yardstick of all the development partners are talking about. But that notwithstanding, we still would want to appreciate that government is doing something, because we are on the way going. And it's not easy, particularly in this very fiscal year, you know, because of COVID and other constraints. Resources are very scarce, and in the portion of the resources, MOPSI is giving plus MOHAS, like I said, education sector, 14% of the national budget. We would still want to have more, but we appreciate what is being available as we speak.
Thank you very much, DPS. I'll of course come back to you, but before that, I'll ask Mr. Damfa, why is it important for citizens to understand the budget allocation?
Thank you very much, Omar. I think it is very, very important for people to understand. And just like the DPS said, you know, we specifically, you know, looking at education sector as an example, for example. Now, the DPS highlighted a very important point. If you look at the international, you know, benchmark for any government to be seen as, you know, making education a priority, at least a budget allocation of 20%, is an acceptable, a percentage that ensures that the government has taken education very seriously. And if you look at the Gambia, like the percentage that DPS said is still below, the accepted threshold. However, one thing we should understand, because if you look at the budget allocation itself, especially looking at the education sector, it tries to promote, equity in educational opportunities. For instance, if you look around in so many countries, or even Gambia in particular, you understand, there is huge variation, in terms of opportunities for the people, you understand. So, but then if education is adequately funded, it will be able to bridge, those gaps in terms of, educational inequalities, looking at, the regional differences, among other issues. So allocation to sectors, specifically, to education, is very, very important. In a nutshell, it tries to definitely promote, equity, in opportunities for people in the country.
DPS, of course, before we come to, because, of course, if a ministry is underfunded, there are implications, especially when it comes to development. But before coming there, I'll just want you to tell our viewers what was allocated to the ministry for the FY 21. What are the key projects that, of course, citizens should expect to be embarked on, finalized, and or continued at the ministry?
I mean, like I said, the fiscal year 2021, the allocation for development is about 68,300,000. But if you look at MOPSI as a sector, it's a huge sector. That definitely can do very little for the ministry. But you will also appreciate that the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education work in tandem with partners, like the World Bank, the GPE, MRC Holland Foundation, and these are mainly our, supporters or donors in terms of developmental projects. When it comes to classroom, for example, construction, they are our good partners, and they're doing a very huge or good work in that direction. Particularly MRC Holland. As we speak, we have more than 1,000 classrooms that are under construction and about to be completed soon in various regions and districts in the country. In terms of trying to also address the issue of equity and equal opportunities, as Mr. Danfa alluded to, the ministry is doing also, with support from the World Bank as we speak, the introduction of the hardship allowance that we give to teachers to encourage them to accept posting in difficult to reach areas, and also maintain them there. These are some of the initiatives that we are doing. The Kuwaiti Fund is just closing, very soon, which was also supporting the Madra education in the country. So these are the various projects. But when you talk about interventions, these are initiatives that the ministry is taking up in terms of addressing the issue of quality and access, within the country. We have a lot of interventions as far as the issue of access and quality is concerned. The classroom construction, the staff quarters for teachers, these are all trying to address both access and quality, but equity also, as he alluded to, so that the child in Banjul should not be at an advantage compared to somebody in Kedjarga or in Bolibana, because at the end of the day, all Gambians, and they should be given the equal opportunities as far as education is concerned. And that has prompted the sector to come up with interventions and initiatives as to what do we do. Not only constructing classrooms, not only posting teachers, but even the children. We have come up with the donkey cart initiative that transport children to school. We have the hardship, as I alluded to. We equally have the PSI, PMI programs that are coming. The provision of teaching and learning materials, for even the physically challenged and disabled children. So there are a lot of activities that the ministry or initiative that the ministry is doing, all in trying to make sure that at the end of the day, the Gambian child, no matter wherever you are, you have equal access to education like any other person. And these are very, very paramount, or conspicuous, if I may put it that way, activities and initiatives that the Ministry of Basic and Secondary School is doing.
Brilliant, DPS. Of course, the next question is going to be general. Both of you could share your opinion on it. And this is when it comes to, of course, foundation building. There is no doubt that the Ministry of Basic is the foundation of a country when it comes to education. More often we hear people say, you ask for what you can do for your country and not what your country can do for you. But there is this saying also, your country should do something for you before the country asks you to do something. And education, I think, is number one. How important is the Ministry of Basic when it comes to building the foundation? Mr. Danfa.
Well, thank you very much, Omar. Just like you said, education is the foundation for any country or any government to strive and be successful. I mean, looking at MOPSI, we will definitely admit that, there have been tremendous, amount of, progress that have been registered over the years, and definitely, if you look at that, that progress that the ministry had registered over the years was as a result of, being very proactive in the way they, look at issues. If you look at education, of course, there are, a lot of issues that come to mind in terms of access to education, quality, among other things. These are very important issues. And as far as Gambia is concerned, and as far as I know, in terms of access and affordability, that is not a question. And even in terms of quality, I think there is a lot of progress in that area. And this will also prompt me to add that, because of all these issues, it is important that education is given a priority. Education should be fully funded. Notwithstanding, we should not only, take it as only a government initiative. We understand there are a lot of donor intervention, the level of education, but there's still, the private sector, have also had their share. But again, it should be a collaborative effort on all sides. After all, if you look at the labor force in this country, not only, at the end of the day, when they are graduated, go to government to work, but of course, the private sector. So education should be a business for all.
DPS, do you realize the importance of your ministry in building the foundation of this country?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mr. Damfa has said it all. Education is the business of everybody. I mean, it's not government alone. Every individual, starting from the parent at the home to the teacher in the school, and to government and the employees. Because the private sector, I think, need to understand as we speak that they are getting their employees or their staff from the force or the chunk that is coming out of the school system. And if you would want to have a quality working force, you need to support quality education to be produced at the end of the day. And as a country, we are a developing country, and it's something that we have to accept. Government alone cannot do it. The needs of education are huge, and it's very expensive. But there's this thing that if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. And I don't think as a country we would want to go that way. So therefore we all have to come forward, and put all hands on deck to ensure that we are able to support basic education. Because if you do not have a good quality basic education, for you to get quality education at this tertiary level is going to be very difficult. Because I always use this example, it's the issue of the egg and the chicken, which come first. You have an egg, you expect to have a chicken or a chick. But if you have a chick equally, you expect to have an egg. But which comes first? It implies that we need to understand that at that level, for them to get what they want, they must invest here. Because the very people that they are investing on are going to be the labor force, but equally are going to turn around to be the teachers that are coming back to the schools to teach. If you want quality teachers, you must produce quality students. How do you produce quality students? By investing into education. And it is expensive. It's a hard fact. We have to accept education is expensive, but that notwithstanding, it has to be a priority. I mean, all the countries we talked about, even if they talk about the Asian tigers, they obtain independence like the African countries. How are they able to get out of poverty and out of all what it takes them to where they are? Because they have invested hugely into education. So we equally, as a developing nation, must accept that it is a priority. We invest into it to ensure that at the end of the day, we reap the benefit. It's not going to be an issue of for you and I. We may not be around, but generations that are coming, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren are going to reap the benefit. And unless and until we see Gambia and Gambia's tomorrow, it's going to be difficult. And this is a problem that we as a country have. We never think about the future. Gambians are only myself. And we need to get away from that now. We need to think outside the box. It's not you and I, Omar. People have invested for us to be where we are today. So we need to equally invest 3 times what they have done on us to enable the coming generations, because their time is going to be more difficult, more competitive, because it's not going to be national but international. And then we must produce that kind of citizenry that are able to compete in the international arena.
Thank you very much, DPS. Of course, you talked about the over $2 billion that was allocated to your ministry. We will come to what is spent on it so far. But before that, we'll go back to Damfa and ask him probably to briefly. I know these questions sometimes can be very similar, but the basic questions, because this is not only about discussing, it's also about enlightening the citizenry for them to understand how they can hold government accountable and how government should be accountable to them. So the next question on the line is, what does government account for? For instance, example of government accountability.
Well, thank you very much, Omar. If you look at what government account for, just like we've alluded to earlier, is into different things. You understand? First of all, we should understand that government is entrusted with the resources of the state, and how those resources are being, used, spent. They should be accountable for that. You understand? And also, government also have, policies and programs, that are in place. So are they going by that? For example, these are another thing that we can hold government accountable to those things. And also, government also might make some, policy pronouncements. Are they doing that? For example, we can hold them accountable for that. We've also, maybe we'll see, the government, for example, the president going on a tour, for example, maybe people's tour. So issues raised and some of the things that he has said, he could be accountable for those things. So there are various areas where we could hold government accountable, ranging from the resources, ranging from policies, ranging from pronouncements, that they have made among other issues. So these are areas, and every citizen, including the civil society organization, could definitely hold government accountable on those things.
DPS, that of course brings us to our next question. Of course, which of course has to do with accountability. Maybe our viewers will want to know how many of the over 2 billion is expended so far in the past 2 months or so?
Omar, as far as our data is concerned, up to the 12th of March 2021, we have spent $439,009,819.57. And if you disaggregate that, the recurrent received $433,009,819.57, and development received $6 million so far. So that is what is being disbursed, or that has been spent as far as, or up to 12th of March 2021.
DPS, how do you measure achievements at the ministry?
You know, as a ministry, we have our sector policy. We also have our strategic plan. And we have set targets, in the strategic plan as to what we expect to happen, And those are the targets that we measure against our achievement, or whether we have realized them or not. Let me cite an example. When the National Development Plan was developed, there were targets that were set for the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Studies in terms of enrollment from ECD, to enrollment into LBS, enrollment into SSS and US. And I'm happy to say comfortably, within the first year, and its first and a half year, MOPSI has surpassed all those targets. We have surpassed them, which is a very good indication as to, how the sector is doing. But the feeling at the ministry is that if we set targets and realize them within a short period of time, does not make us rest in our laurels. We just go back and we said, were they realistic? If they were realistic, then we need to set more difficult targets, And we have our M&E unit that goes around, to look at our achievement in relation to the targets, that we are setting ourselves. Like, if you look at in our education policy, we're talking about the transition rate from one level to the other. And those are the things that we work against, as to by the end of the midterm or by the end of the policy period, have we realized it? And those are some of the data we have here, which is very impressive in terms of the enrollment, in terms of quality, which is still a challenge. We feel that as a ministry, we are not doing as we would want to see as far as quality is concerned. And it's very unfortunate. The only yardstick that is available now to talk about quality is the terminal exams, the grade 9s and the grade 12 exams. Those are the instruments that are available for now. But we have seen the steady progress over the years, in terms of the percentage passes. And that is why we said we are happy with it, but we will not rest in our laurels. We will continue to strive harder to make sure that in the very near future, we are able to, as a ministry, that, okay, out of the 10,000 who start with the grade 9s, at least 8,000 of them are able to get, 6 credit, including in English and Maths. And in the WAS also, the same kind of trend. So that in the very near future, the university, the colleges, the higher institutions, we have the required number of children or students who want to enroll with the requisite qualifications or credits that may enable them to. Let me cite this example of science and mathematics teachers. It's a challenge in the country, But the problem is we are not getting the students. And if you don't get the students, you will not be able to get the teachers. But equally, if you don't get the teachers, you cannot get the students. So these are things that we are grappling. Then we came with the initiative of providing them easy scholarships to go to the university, train them, and when they are done with their program, they come back to teach. But he will agree too. These are very marketable people. You keep them for a year or two, they exit into the private sector, or maybe QTV would take a good number of them again, because these are people that are marketable, they have skills. And that's the very normal about life. People have to move, they cannot be studying. But the belief at the ministry is, we don't still mind them going, but let's train as much as we need to replace them in the school system. When the private sector is saturated, eventually they will stay in the school system.
Coming back to Damfa, when does a government need to be accountable to its citizens?
Thank you very much, Umar. I think the government should be accountable to its citizen at all time. Now, we need to understand that as citizens of a country, we have a great role to play. And that is why most of these things I will channel it to the role of the civil society, for example. And most of the time are the ones who are, very active in trying to ensure that, whatever government is doing, they are being accountable to. Now, looking at the budget we are talking about in terms of budget accountability, so, there are various stages, in budget preparation and so on. And at each level, you understand, the oversight people like the civil society and other actors need to be involved, to ensure that they are part of the process, and in that way, they can make it easy for them to make government accountable on whatever they are doing. So, the budget preparation stage throughout, and also even at the execution stage, where the government starts, spending. So at each of those levels, government need to be accountable, so that we don't necessarily have to wait until at the end of the, the fiscal year that we really want to see, how the government has fared. No, this monthly or quarterly, assessment of government performance, or what they are doing exactly, just like, we are now bringing the sectors to account on what they have done, and we have seen so far what the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education have done. So, in terms of holding government accountable, should be a continuous process and should be all around the year.
DPS, of course, your citizens, the citizens of this country, especially those who are interested about accountability, will want to know what's next for the Ministry of Basic in the coming months.
Yeah, the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, Omar, as you may be aware of, has a policy, and that is 2016 to 2030 education policy, which is what is guiding our operations. We also have a strategic plan, which is 16 to 2030 again. And these are the documents that are guiding us as to, what comes next, And at any point in time, we are trying to work towards realizing the set of targets in those documents. But also, in addition, one of the immediate things that are coming is we are working on supporting Gambia College to really, make sure that it's equipped and, well organized in terms of resources and administrative management. And there's an opportunity or window of opportunity which we call the additional financing, which mainly, you can say if you want more than 1/3 of the money is going to the Gambia College, even though they are not under MOPS's purview. But we feel like as an institution, they are the one producing our teachers. So if we do not support them, we wouldn't get what we want. And that's why we are putting a lot of resources into the Gambia College to make sure that, through the World Bank support, anyway, Gambia College is able to measure to expectation in terms of their degree levels. They are challenged, honestly, but we are optimistic that we'll be able to work with them as a very close partner to ensure that we address some of those challenges. The issue of classroom construction, as I alluded to, is still continuing with support mainly from the MRC Holland Foundation, who are doing a tremendous job. Water provision, they are equally drilling a lot of bowls in schools, building staff quarters, and the list continues. As a sector, we have an objective based on our education policy, and until 2030, we want to make sure that we work along those lines. But we will also be working towards the midterm review very soon, and that was also going to guide us as to, do we need to change some of our policy pronouncements? Do the objectives need to change? Should our targets change? As I said, in terms of the enrollment, we have realized a lot of gains, And we may change definitely target figures, obviously, because we know that if you were targeting 60 by 2030 and by 2021 you already have 58, you know that you need to move so that you go beyond that. So these are some of the initiatives. In terms of also IT, I mean, we are providing schools with, science equipment, furnishing labs. We are also giving them, providing them with science gadget to enable them the use of science in teaching, because COVID, Omari will agree with me, has taken everybody by surprise and has changed the rules now of the game. It has let us understood as a country or as a sector that we need to more focus on the use of technology in teaching. That's distance education. So in that drive, we are doing very, very well in terms of trying to equip our schools. We're providing you with televisions, sets, trying to have radio stations in all the regions so that we will be, using them for our distance learning. The MOPSI TV, which we are aware of, we want to make sure it become fully operational. And we have what you call iGambia or Island Gambia, which is another development coming, and very soon we'll be launching it. These are all initiatives that the ministry would want to get into so that children in remote areas can sit down, and with the provision of tablets, obviously, to schools, children can be offline and do their work comfortably at a little cost or no cost at all. The cost, what I mean is the schools are going to be provided with solars, obviously, to solarize the schools, and then those who already have it will maintenance them, and then provide the children with, iPads and mobile phones where they can definitely use hands to learn through IT, because distance education, as I said, is becoming a priority for us as a ministry, because COVID has taught us that we must go that way, so that we will not be caught on surprise again. I am happy to say, when the COVID struck in March of last year, we were one of the first countries in the world, I'm not talking about in Africa, in the world, to start distance learning. And that was a plus for the Gambia. Gambians need to know that MOPSI, even though with all the difficulties and all the, queries we're getting outside, we were one of the first countries in the world to start distance education, which many countries have to call and congratulate. Many countries have to call and want to know how we started. I have conducted a lot of interviews with people from outside the Gambia, trying to know how were we able to. And this was because before COVID, we have been working on trying to digitalize our curriculum, which we need to work on complete now, so that by the time COVID struck, there were materials that we can. Because remember, government closed its schools on Tuesday, Wednesday, the following Monday, we had our distance learning. So these are things that the ministry is doing and the public need to know. But what I would want to just say, we need support. And when we say support, as Mr. Damfa alluded to, we need the private sector, we need the individuals, so that we all understand that education is the business of everybody, and then it's not Mr. Job, because Mr. Job is there today. It's very obvious. I will not be there in the next 5 years. That's obvious. But then education will stay, because the children of this country are going to be there forever. So we need to institutionalize a system that is going to enhance them to have better education to be able to compete in the international world.
Thank you very much, DPS. That's quite revealing when it comes to, of course, the things that the ministry is doing. Coming back to Damfa, more often citizens talk about accountability, the need for government to be accountable and transparent, but more often they don't know who accounts on behalf of government.
Well, thank you very much, Omar. I think who accounts for government are very obvious. One example is here. We have the DPS, with us try to tell us exactly, from the allocations, what they have done so far. So, I mean, the key people in the sectors, you understand, at policy level, in the ministries, these the key officials, are the one who, take the responsibility, on behalf of their institutions to be accountable for whatever they are doing. So, I mean, in simple terms, we should understand these are heads of institutions or their representatives, as the case may be, who become accountable to the people, the citizens of the country, of whatever this sector is doing. So, and those people also, it is important that just like the MOPSI has done, for them to come out, you understand, engage the public. And one way of doing that, of course, I earlier alluded to, is to, use the technology. The websites are available. Sometimes, some sectors, you go to their, websites, you don't get enough information. So some of this information should be for public consumption. So I want to use this platform to encourage, government to be more accountable. You see to it that at least some of the informations are available, online, so that the public can, make best use of it. You should also remember that, part of the, the accountability is there's a need, because, the accountability should not be seen as a negative connotation. No. If you look at the civil society, for example, some of those information, data available, online could be used to advocate for more funding, for example, for the sectors. You understand? So they need to have a data that they can rely on. Tell the various, stakeholders, those who are responsible that, look, we need to support this ministry. These are the programs. So the ministry also should be able to, itemize in terms of, the progress that they have done over the years, a credible data for that matter, what they have achieved so far. And, in the future, what are the, projected, things that they envisage to happen. With those kind of information available, a proper advocacy could be done to ensure that, the funds are get available for those sectors to, fully optimize, their full potentials.
Thank you very much, Mr. Damfa. Again, coming back to DPS, you have given us a detailed rundown of what the ministry has been doing so far, and of course the plans ahead in the coming months. But more often we see a lot of complaints, either online or even sometimes on newspapers and radios about conditions of some schools. I witnessed during one of the National Assembly tours, the National Assembly Committee on Education, we visited schools where children will sit on the floor. There were a few, but it happened because I saw it myself. What is the ministry doing to address this? And the other thing is the stakeholders, who are of course the citizens. How do they hold the ministry accountable if they felt probably been underserved at some point? How do they hold the ministry accountable?
Omar, thank you very much. That's a very important and interesting observation. I wouldn't say, definitely we do not have furniture problem in our schools. We do, honestly. But I want to say also some of the videos I have seen online, the people who placed them there didn't understand what they did. Of recent, I saw one, I think it's from around Jiboro or so. That is very normal. Immediately I looked at the video, I said, the guy who is using this is not a teacher, because that is the normal class setting. These children were out doing something. They were on activity. You would see those who were on the floor were doing something, those sitting on the tables were also doing something. It's a class whereby you have different abilities and each group is giving your own task to do. If you talk about the ECD, that is the international norm. They are expected to sit on the floor. They are not supposed to sit on chairs because some of them will be hanging. So the international norm is they sit on floors. That is one. And many people don't understand that. And unless and until maybe you have this kind of engagements, people wouldn't know. We definitely have challenges in terms of furniture. That is a hard fact. And we have done some work, particularly during the COVID period, in going around the regions to renovate a lot of broken furniture. Also, We are hoping that we'll be buying some new furniture, this year if possible, because we are also getting support from philanthropists and goodwill people, particularly Gambians in the diaspora. They're really supporting some schools in terms of furniture. But what I want to make clear here is, it's not that any group of children you found sitting down on the floor because of lack of furniture. No, that is the class setting. Some classes, as I said, depending on the kind of activity they're doing, depending on the age group that are in the class, sometimes are allowed to sit on the floor. That notwithstanding, is a challenge which we will accept, and we will want support from all and sundry to make sure that they support the ministry in trying to address this problem. MRC Holland, who is a very good partner of us, they are providing all the furniture in the schools that they're constructing. Any school they construct, they'll furnish it. Even the schools they're rehabilitating, they're furnishing them. But still, it's a huge problem in terms of the needs and in terms of the numbers. We have some schools that are seriously, but we are also, with our regional office directors and staff, even encouraging them. You go to a school, they have more than what they need, and the next school is not having anything. So these are some of the things that will also encourage, and they will move the furniture to those schools. But to be honest, it's a fact, it's a problem. We agree it's happening in some of our schools, but I want to make this point clear that not all the children you found sitting on the floor are because of lack of furniture, but some of them is the class settings that requires them to sit on the floor, and then they will sit on the floor.
How, how do citizens hold the ministry accountable? Those who are aggrieved about something, how do they reach out?
The way they can do is not holding the ministry, but holding government. I know ministry is part of government, but if the citizens or the citizenry understand the constraint that the ministry is, they can, through advocacy, through their National Assembly members, through their, these civil societies, can, put pressure and, appeal to government that, no, what you are giving MOPSI, you need to increase it. Because, for example, when government is to prepare a budget, they send a circular. The call circular comes, they give you a ceiling, that this is where you can stop. We deliberately, as a ministry, will say, no, we are going beyond, because our needs are more than what you're giving us. But sometimes you also sympathize with them, because, they know you need it, but it's not there. Remember, we are a developing country, Omar. We need to understand that. So, but if the citizenry understands the allocations, understand how the resources are utilized, then they would not only appreciate, but they will also look inside to say, what do we do as citizens of the country? They can contribute, they can support, they can advocate, and they can even enlighten others. So that you have very good Gambians, you have at least some well-off people who, to just fabricate 1,000 tables and chairs today, it's not taking anything off their cover. And then send it to the school. But then you should do that. How many schools, how many children are you serving? You understand? A school has this water problem, But also, I would want to say, Gambians must accept that as a society or as citizens, we have also responsibilities. Let me cite one common problem that sometimes when I go on trek makes me very mad. Our donkey cart initiative. This was provided to children who are young and traveling distance to school. You go to a community, the cart is broken, what? Just punch your tire. How many dollars does it take you to change? $25 at most. But they will expect the school or government to come. And I said, when is government coming to? You think that the permanent secretary will sign a voucher for $25 to go and change the tire at Sari Alpha? No. What is stopping us? We as the people who are benefiting directly, our children are the one using that card to go to school, to pull out $25.
Quite revealing.
So we have to take responsibility to do. It's not only government. We are the government.
Quite revealing. We have 5 minutes to go. Mr. Damfa, maybe a brief rundown on the way forward. And of course, you can conclude.
Well, I think I just want to add to what the DPS said. Just like we said, education is business for all. So that is why it should be a concerted effort from all sides, from the citizens, the civil society, and other actors, including the teachers union, and so on. So actually what we expect, for example, from the ministry, especially MOFSI in this case, we not only want to see, their progress in terms of performance, what they have done, but perhaps maybe they could also share their challenges. You understand? In that way, people can pick it up. Try to have advocacy around. You understand? The civil society, could engage. In that way, also I would also advise the civil society organization. We can look at the budget of the Gambia, try to compare with other countries with similar economic performance, and try to see whether actually education is being prioritized. In that way, you can advocate, even at the level of the parliament, for example. The minister also, at the level of cabinet also, could also present, a very credible data about the progress done in the education sector, for example. Also, in trying to ensure that at least, you get the cabinet support from that end, wherein, much more support could be given into the education sector. We have seen, if you look at the 2021 budget, for example, the big chunk of it is going into what? Debt financing. So that also called for, financial experts to look around to ensure that at least we have some kind of what, discipline in terms of execution of what? Our budget line. In that way, we can engineer, try to, divert funds into education sector such that at least 20% of the national budget is allocated to education to ensure that all these problems we talk about here, could be addressed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Damfa, for that brilliant insight. DPS, thank you for coming. I'll just allow you to, in 1 minute or two, give your concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Omar. I think this kind of forums are very important because it helps us to enlighten the populace and also make so many things clear. I mean, if you could remember, during the start of the COVID, there was this rumor in town that every Gambian had at the back of their head, and MOFSI is giving 35 million. And up to this moment we are talking, we have not seen any 35 million. But we find it difficult to clear that in the minds of people. Our teachers, our staff, everywhere, 35 million. But if we have this kind of forums, we can explain to people, all that glitters is not gold. I mean, we are equally challenged like any other sector. But if you understand that education is a process, and equally is everybody's business, we crave the indulgence of Gambians, regardless of where you're coming from, to come together and see or realize that Gambia's tomorrow can be built today. And the youngsters of today are going to be the leaders of tomorrow, and we have to work to make sure that we equip them, we prepare them better, so that when we all should no longer be around, we'll be resting in our graves in peace. Because then we would have handed over the mantle of leadership to very responsible, educated Gambians. If we are able to do that, inshallah, everything will be okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DPS. Thank you very much, Mr. Lamin Damfa. Thank you very much, our viewers. This was your talk show, Government Accountability Talk Show on QTV, brought to you, of course, by the Republican Institute, International Republican Institute, IRI, with funding from the U.S. State Department. We say goodbye until when we come your way again. Thank you.